Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. And as usual, I'm going to do this in two parts, and I think I've got just enough questions to do a gear talk for part 3. So, here we go. First question. It is well documented that sleep is imperative for proper recovery and muscle building. However, if you don't get enough sleep during the week due to job and stress-related factors, does sleeping more on the weekend or your days off from work make up for the lack of sleep during the rest of the week? Thanks. All right, great question, and kind of difficult to answer because you have to define what you mean by make up for. Meaning, can you catch up on lost sleep and lost recovery from it? Yeah, you can catch up on lost sleep, and when you finally catch up on that lost sleep, let's say you did your training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but you didn't get enough sleep, right? And then you finally catch up on your sleep on, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night when you're no longer working and training and all of that. Do you finally recover if you got enough sleep for it on the extra days? Yes, you finally recover then. Do you catch up for it as far as all your other things go, your memory partitioning, hormone levels, everything else that might be having issues as a result of the reduced sleep Monday through Friday? Yeah, you'll catch up for it on the weekend. However, the thing is, while you can catch up on lost sleep, you can't store up extra sleep. And that's something that researchers in the area of sleep studies have noticed. This is stuff that I remember professors talking about quite a bit when I had a professor discussing this in detail. They basically broke that down, that you can't store up extra sleep. So does this mean that your gains will be the same? If you catch up to, say, your 8 hours a night, you catch up for it finally on the weekend because you sleep in for 12 or 13 hours a couple days. No, your gains won't be equal. And the reason is because you missed some of your growth window on the Monday through Friday. Now, what you're going to get, you're going to fully recover probably if the sleep was the recovery issue on the weekend. And that means that you're going to fully adapt to your Friday workout. But your Monday and Tuesday workouts, if you're a bit sleep deprived, you're not going to gain quite as much adaptation from them. Meaning the reduced sleep on the same days as the training means you're going to go into those workouts the Wednesday and the Friday. You're going to go into those with a little less strength and a little less recovery. So what you're generally going to find is that probably your Monday workouts are going to tend to be your best because you've gone into them fully refreshed in that situation. And I'm not saying everyone does this on the weekend and then it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but I'm giving you a schedule to understand it. Because you're going to have fully adapted and recovered and you're finally going to catch up. Your Monday workouts are usually going to be your best peak strength. But your Wednesday and Friday workouts, you're not going to be performing optimally because you haven't fully recovered from the others. So, ultimately, you could be shortchanging yourself some of your progress, some of your strength, some of your muscle mass as a result of the sleep deprivation throughout the week. So I might suggest to people that they find a little better use of their time, meaning very few people, unless you do shift work, and if you do shift work to where you do 24s and things like that, this is going to happen sometimes. But people who work no more than 12-hour days, probably not a problem. You can still find a way to schedule these things and get your 8 hours of sleep, get your commutes, your workouts, everything else in. And I would suggest that if you have a sleep issue, if you work 12-hour shifts Monday through Friday, 12-hour shifts back to back, you have no business doing any sort of high volume training. You probably need to limit your workouts to 30 or 45 minutes at the very most, because the actual workout length combined with your commute might actually be costing you 30 minutes of sleep on those days. And that 30 minutes of extra sleep, or that hour of extra sleep, is going to be worth a hell of a lot more progress for someone who's struggling to get their 8 hours due to their schedule in the middle of the week. It's going to be worth a lot more progress than that extra 5 or 6 or 10 sets you're trying to squeeze in is going to be. It's going to be worth a lot more muscle gains. Recovery is more important than volume. And I can't understate that. That can't be overstated enough. All right, next question. Is a recomp possible on your novice program by eating strictly keto? I eat keto for health reasons, therefore won't be able to take advantage of glycogen supercompensation from refeeds. All right, good question. And I'm assuming you have something like epilepsy or some other condition in which you're being prescribed a ketogenic diet. If not, and you're actually seriously concerned about recompositioning, you might want to reconsider a strict keto diet. But if your doctor has medically prescribed this for you, then obviously you need to follow it. Now, can you still recomposition as a novice on a strict ketogenic diet, what a lot of people will call an SKD, which is a standard ketogenic diet? Yeah, you can recomp. You're not going to have, it's full of glycogen stores, but it's totally doable. And the reason is you're basically still a novice lifter. Well, novice lifters, as long as they get sufficient protein and aren't nutrient deficient and get enough sleep, and in fact, in some cases, I've seen novices recomposition on terrible diets, as long as they kept their caloric balance pretty close to maintenance. I've seen novice lifters come in and train hard who are not on the best of diets. They might actually have some deficient diets who still recomposition, and that's because when you're on a well-written, structured program with solid progressive overload on your big movements, that again is well written, what you find is that novices tend to recomposition at least a little bit, almost irrespective of their diet. The only way a novice doesn't recomposition is if they starve themselves so badly that they're in an enormous calorie deficit and just peeling off body fat at a massive rate, in which case they might not gain muscle. But again, if they're morbidly obese, they'll still gain muscle doing it. Or someone who overeats so much that they're gaining more than 2 pounds a week. That's going to be the exception. A guy who's gaining more than 2 pounds a week is not going to lose body fat. As an early novice, he's going to gain body fat. But outside of the extremes where people are either extreme bulking or cutting, novices on a well-written structured program, and mine qualifies, my novice program is, you're going to tend to gain some muscle and lose some fat no matter what your diet is like, as long as it's not too extreme. Now, we could argue that a ketogenic diet is pretty extreme, but the thing is, if you're getting sufficient protein and you're not burning through a lot of glycogen, meaning you're not doing a bunch of HIIT cardio or GPP work around those 3 workouts every week in addition to them, you're probably going to be okay. You're going to hold less muscle glycogen. You might not gain quite as much muscle as you could have, but even on a strict ketogenic diet on the program, as long as protein, total calories, and total sleep and rest are sufficient, you're probably still going to be able to recomposition even on a strict ketogenic diet with no refeeds. So the answer, short answer, yeah, you should be fine as long as those other factors are in place. All right, next question. I've been lifting for a little over a year now. For the past couple of months, I've been doing 1 set per exercise. I tried your novice program, but it kicked my ass. My strength isn't where I'd like it to be, however. When I started lifting, I was nearly 400 pounds, so I've had to eat a caloric deficit all the way through. Because of this, would I hit my newbie gains cap a little later than someone who could focus entirely on building muscle? All right, brother, fantastic question. And if you're telling me that you started at 400 pounds and you've been in a caloric deficit for over a year straight now while actually following my structured program, like you tried my novice program and you cut back to 1 set, I'm going to have to say congratulations, job well fucking done. So that aside, let's get over to your real question. You have been losing weight continually for over a year. Yes, you're going to miss some of your new gains. It's going to take longer because, simply put, you've been in a big caloric deficit, and you can gain muscle and strength in a caloric deficit as someone who's morbidly obese. It can absolutely be done. The thing is, are you going to gain as much muscle as someone who had been able to eat a small surplus? No, you're not. So if you haven't been able to gain as much muscle of them because of dietary restriction, and I agree with your stance of what you're doing. If you started at 400 pounds, losing 200 pounds at this point is probably more important than gaining a few extra pounds of muscle. Way, way more important for your well-being, health, and even athleticism. Vastly more important. So keep doing what you're doing there. Is it going to take you longer? Yeah. Because you've been in a caloric deficit the entire time, I would not expect you to hit my noob strength gain standards in the first year, because as I've stated in those standards, that's for people who are in good health, who are able to eat sufficient food. That's one of the things I point out, and some other factors as well for people to hit what I consider to be the target numbers. Well, if you started obese, you're not in good health, and if you've been losing weight, you're not getting sufficient food. So that being said, it could take you an extra 6 to 8 months to milk out those full noob gains. To get all of them completed, to gain every last ounce of them, it could probably take you 50 to 60% longer than someone else to get there. So when you get to that 18-month mark, if you're still pushing on a good program and you haven't, been able to bench 2 plates, squat 3 plates, deadlift 4 plates yet, might be some other factors to look at, but I wouldn't expect it to be unreasonable to take you 18 to 20 months to do so, given everything that you've described. So that's just reasonable. You got to remember, man, you're losing a lot of weight as you go. And you're going to gain a decent amount of muscle and strength, but nowhere near a guy who started a lot leaner and who's able to overeat. He's just started with an advantage over you. But the thing is, you're still making an enormous progress also. I mean, losing all that body fat as you go is an enormous life-changing and quality of life-changing thing to do. So that's worth more, in my opinion, than gaining a little bit of extra muscle. And again, hopefully you share that same opinion. But yeah, give it to the 18 to 20 month mark and then see where you're really at, and see where you're at then. And then you can get a more honest assessment, because you just haven't been able to focus entirely on building muscle while losing that weight. It is what it is. All right, next question. Hi, Jason. Thanks for everything so far. My core strength sucks. I think it's my weak link for squats and deadlifts. What can I do to increase this? I've heard planks are a great exercise, but I'm looking to get the best bang for my bucks. Thanks very much. Now, I think planks and weighted planks are fantastic because, again, they train your core to be strong in a static position, and that's going to help you quite a bit on your deadlift and your squat. So if you feel it's your weak link in your deadlift and your squat, I would definitely consider doing those. The other thing that you probably want to do, and again, this is out of the West Side Barbell book. I took this from Louis Simmons because, again, he's always pointed out that if you're standing or you're on any playing field and you get hit in the guts, what position you're in when you usually get hit in the guts, or you get kicked in the guts in a fight or MMA or anything else, you're usually on your feet. When you're doing the squat and the deadlift, where are you? Are you laying on the ground or are you standing on your feet? You're up on your feet. So if you want true specificity of training, you need to be doing standing core work. If you wanted to have the best possible carryover to those exercises, standing core work. And there are plenty of videos, if you dig through my training playlist, of both me and my girlfriend doing standing band crunches. So if you want to see how they're executed, standing band crunches combined with weighted planks are probably the two biggest bang for your buck as far as improving your overall core strength that will carry over to your squat and deadlift. And they're both very, very good for overall athleticism for field athletes as well, or even contact sport athletes. So definitely add those to your list. Do those for a few months, and I think your core weakness will be sorted right out. All right, next question. Jason, could you make an update on a training style you mentioned before now that we have new data from Dr. Brad? The training where you use moderately heavy, 70 to 80% intensity, high set 10 sets, lower rep 3 reps with low rest, 30 to 60 seconds. It was training for power and hypertrophy. Do you think this training is still viable for both? Do you think training this way could benefit someone training for aesthetic, strength, and power? Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I talked about that is that Dr. Brad had done a study in which he showed that doing 7 sets of 3 or 8 sets of 3, I forget which it was, produced just as much hypertrophy gain, that's muscle mass gain, as people who were doing 3 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 8. So something in that range. And that's what he showed in the data, is that full body type programs doing that way produce tremendous results. Now, for me personally, if you recall, I demonstrated that I was doing that. A lot of my off-season powerlifting before I went to the British Grand Prix, if you remember all my training footage, I was doing a lot of that. And a lot of times that's called accumulation training. Some people will call it dynamic effort, other people will call it accumulation training, but the idea is that you're doing triples so that you can maximize speed and power. Because normally, obviously, you are not going to hit failure with 80% with triples. You're nowhere near failure. But the idea is that by doing them as explosively and as quickly as possible, you're still hitting your upper threshold muscle fibers, which you are. You don't need as long of breaks to maintain those. Now, you're saying that based on Dr. Brad's stuff for hypertrophy because he's talking about sets where you're getting close to exhaustion. When we're talking about that 3-minute break, you're talking about sets that you're taking way into exhaustion. Well, with 80%, you should be able to do, 6 or 7 reps sometimes, somewhere between 5 and 7 reps easily, but you're doing triples. That's why you get away with the shorter breaks. The reason Dr. Brad said that you need the longer breaks is because you get stuck using a lighter weight. You can't perform as well. You go to do 3 sets of a heavy exercise with your 8 or 9 rep max. There's no way you're going to hit 8 reps 3 times in a row with 1 minute. You just can't. The weight's going to have to be reduced. Therefore, it's less tension on the bar. With accumulation training like this, you're not doing it just for weight. You're doing it for speed and power. So you're doing it for the speed component. And I used to do a lot of that. You guys would see me do pause squats, pen lay rows, pause presses, but they were all fast and explosive. A triple, wait 30 to 60 seconds, do it again. But you'll note they were all exercises with a power or a pause component. And you'll also note that I would build weight over time. So what I would do, remember on the squat, I started with something like 380 pounds. And I would build up to where I could do 10 sets of 3 with no more than 60 seconds between. And when I got to the point where I could do all 10 sets without any grinders, I would increase the weight and do as many sets as I could. And sometimes it would drop down to 7 and I would increase weight. And I believe when I got near the end, what I was doing was 10 sets of 3 with about 420 for pause squats with those short breaks. And then I started training for power again. But the thing is, you'll note with that style of training, since we know it induces just as much hypertrophy as the other, it's great for hypertrophy. It's one of the best forms of power training. So what more do you want other than it takes longer? And that's the thing you've got to keep in mind. You're talking about spending, because 60 seconds between 10 sets, you're spending 10 up to 15 minutes between the warm-up preparing for an exercise on one exercise. For a lot of people, that's just unacceptable for hypertrophy. A lot of guys want to get in and do their 3 sets. With 3 minutes between, you do 1 set, rest 3 minutes, do another set, rest 3 minutes. That's only 2 3-minute breaks. This you're done in like 7 or 8 minutes. The other simply takes more time. It's a time economy issue, but it produces, as far as we know from the data, pretty much equal hypertrophy, but you get a better speed strength component, a better starting strength component. So it has a better power carryover. But for someone who doesn't mind spending the extra time in the gym, accumulation training like that is absolutely fantastic. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.